So we are going live. Excellent. Hi, everybody. Good morning to those who live in the Pacific time zone. Good afternoon to all my friends in New York, and good evening to everybody in Europe. I can see actually we have some people also from India, so I'm not sure exactly what time is in India. Must be like a very, very late or very early. In any case, it's you all guys welcome. It's amazing to see this international community coming together. I'm just looking a little bit who's there. Oh my God, 2 a.m. Very good. Well, that's a dedication if you're still, here and I want to attend the course at 2 a.m. I love it. I love it. Okay, Gus is here. Hello, Julian. Hello. I'm just looking to see who's logging in, who's there. Luca from Italy. Just say, guys, where you are. Tanzania. Tanzania is here with us. Wow, I don't think we ever had anybody from Tanzania before. This is amazing. Brandon is here. Andy. Anna Marie from Switzerland. Very good. Kyle from LA. Oh, good. There's more people from LA. Nottingham. Jules. Hello. 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 Amazing, amazing. There is someone from Poland, from Miami. Oh, good, good, good. Just as you are logging in, I'm going to go and start a little bit just with a couple of things. So, welcome to this course. The reason and motivation behind it is really that recently, I have been helping to several, of my clients and colleagues really in setting up remote workflow and grading, and it was actually interesting to see how much confusion there is how to use the color management in Davinci, and I used to criticize it in the past, but I have to give Blackmagic a credit that they are really trying to make this whole process better, and that they are improving constantly their color management, and there are actually some really important settings and changes that they made in 16.2. I think we're now 16.2.1 that are important to note and that we should all kind of pay attention to. And instead of just showing you quickly, hey, click here and click there, I thought it would be an interesting to actually explain the whole reasoning and thinking behind it, and why we manage things in a certain way. At least I'm the type of person that doesn't just want to be told, hey, click this. I'm a type of person that wants to understand why is a certain way of working better than the other. Basically, also wanted to share this with you. I found it the other day and I just kind of thought this is so good. And it's a quote from Socrates, and it says, intelligent individuals learn from everything and everyone, average people from their experience, and the stupid already have all the answers. I actually, thought that all of you should give yourself a pat on the shoulder, because according to Socrates, you're all intelligent individuals. Because I think, learning is just and lifelong learning process, you just never stop. And especially in our industry where things are constantly changing, being updated, moving, So, when you finish this call, you can turn around to your family and say, hey, today I was told that I'm an intelligent individual. At least feel a little bit better about it. I really think this sums it up. What are we going to learn and how are we going to get smarter? So number one, what is scene referred versus display referred workflow? So this is really, really I think the root of the reason why we color manage. And I think, again, that this is not something that, we understand very often. We don't really get it, that color management is not just a thing that somebody tells you should do it, that actually we need to really understand why scene referred grading is better way of doing it. Also, based on that, I'm going to help you understand how to build the color pipeline. Really, I want you to be able to design these pipelines yourself, because every project's going to have certain differences, certain quirks, and I just think that you have to be able to make right decisions to how you're going to design that pipeline. And then I will show you a node tree that I think it's a very good node tree. Again, just use it as a good starting template that you can modify for yourself. It's one that works very good for me, and for people that I know, colorists I work with, they also use very similar node trees to this one. And then basically how to grade ones for SDR to HDR. Now I have to give you a little caveat here, actually, and just before, I was going to start, I got an email from Josh Pines, who said to me, are you really going to be able to do one grade SDR and HDR? And the answer is, of course not. Actually, the caveat is that we have to actually do what we call a trim pass. When we are making an SDR, it's all going to become much clearer to you, but we're not going to grade anything twice. We're just going to do like a trimming pass. You'll see basically what it means. So things can work pretty much automatically, but not always. There is a need for us to sometimes do a little trimming, but still the trimming is much faster process than having to grade everything for a different display. And then also, I want to show you how to set up metadata on export. This is like really the major difference that happened with 16.2. And I think you need to know this because every master you ever export, it's going to need to have that metadata in. Okay, another important thing is this. This particular workflow that I'm going to teach you now is very focused for productions that need to deliver Dolby Vision masters to major streaming providers, okay? And I'm talking about Netflix, I'm talking about Amazon. Okay, they don't do Dolby Vision, they do something called HDR10, 10 plus even. But basically, it's a very similar approach. When we grade, we still grade in a very much the same way. Hulu wants Dolby, Disney is working with Dolby, HBO, I think they're switching also to Dolby. Apple is already Dolby, and I understand that this seems to be becoming the master for most streaming providers that are going to be streaming in HDR, and this is really going to be the most work we're going to be doing, and right now there are some jobs still happening, but the moment everything starts opening and shooting, the majority of work that we as a professional colorist will be doing will be for the streaming providers. And we just have to be really ready to do it. And it's going to actually, once you do like a 2-3 episode, it's just going to be something like you're not going to even think about it. It's just a little bit hard at first. And I think it's okay to assume that, these companies will stay strong because, I just read recently that Netflix has already gained all the new subscribers that they planned to gain in 2020 in just a few weeks. Disney Plus has already reached the targets for new subscribers that they were planning to do. So obviously, since we're sitting at home and got nothing else to do but watch TV, we have basically subscribed to all of them and watching all of the content. And they are definitely in a good financial position to go and produce even more content. So we're going to have to actually really think about how this is all going to be happening. Okay, so I want to start a little bit with just explanation to what is scene referred versus display referred. It's not really difficult, but I think we just have to basically kind of get this straight. I want to just check quickly, how's the chat doing? Is there any questions? No, we're good. And somebody from Madrid is there, and Juxtaposed from London. Hello, Darren. Hello, good. Darren from Brighton is here. Hi, my very good friend. So good to see you here. And Felipe is here as well. Hello, how are you doing? So good to see you guys. I'm so happy. It's actually a really nice thing about, these webinars that you kind of keep in contact with your friends a little bit like this. So, okay, very good. Okay, we have someone from Venice, my neighbor, Edward Chen. Very good, Edward. So good, 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 good. Fantastic. I love it. So thank you guys for joining in. I think we are kind of, seem to be a really good crowd at the moment. So very good. Okay, let's go back to what is scene referred versus display referred. So in most simplest way, the way how we can describe scene referred is that we say that it preserves value of light at capture stage. Okay, so what does it mean? So if we basically have a camera and this camera is capturing, the light values and is, absorbing the photons, we want that information that camera captured to stay in such a state, unaltered state, that we can actually preserve all of that dynamic range that was really happening in that moment. We want to really be able to keep all that information. We want to have that, and I'm going to explain to you a little bit to why this is important. And one job that I want to use an example is a job I did recently for an artist called Marina Abramovic, and it was a very unusual job. I basically was given a task to create a virtual version of Marina, basically an avatar, a VR avatar of her. And she trusted me with that job, and basically we really had to figure out how best we're going to do it. And it was an amazing shoot in underwater with lots of cameras scanning and something like that. But basically what we had to do is we had to capture her with cameras, and then we had to recreate that. So basically we had to go even back to kind of be able to render her and get real-time engines to be able to recreate her. And how did we do it? Of course, by making sure that everything we captured has stayed in the scene referred space. I mean, this is really, really, really important. So actually, a best proof, if you have captured something in the right way and you have got all the information, is if you get this information from the sensor and you can actually go back and recreate the photons that have created this information, that you can really reverse kind of engineer everything that happened, then you know that you have actually good method of capturing. And that's like a proof of concept that kind of, for me, actually really with this job, it all happened. Like I really understood how and why this is really important, and what a big difference it makes when you actually have to deliver such a high quality instead of just producing something for a screen, an SDR screen in this case. One scientist that I think you should all get familiar with if you are interested a little bit more in this subject of light capture and is Paul Debowitz. And I think he's basically, to me, he is basically the best, and I learned so much from his work, and he's just an incredible person. He got also awards for the technology he developed that was used on the biggest visual effects movies. And he, years ago, he actually developed something which is called the light stage, which was this breakthrough technology where he was able to capture things. And I just really wanted to show you something that Paul did very recently, which is a very interesting concept that he developed, which again, I think, when you see in which direction we're going, I think you're going to really, really like it. Okay, so I've just realized that I got myself muted by an accident. I'm so sorry, guys. So let me basically go back a little bit and explain to you know what's happening here. So this is a latest work from Paul Debowitz. Maybe you know I should play this again. What he did is he built this stage where he's able to capture light in such a way that later it can be completely deconstructed and you know used for shaders, and then we can actually go and rebuild it in a real-time render engine even. And now with real-time render engines becoming like a very photoreal, I think you know it's just incredible to you know what we're going to be able to achieve. There's a you know few more shots from here just to see again. So you see this is basically a stage with you know loads of cameras, but the particular way of capturing really allows us to preserve all of that information and actually be able to recreate you know this light later in the render engines. And working scene referred is just going to help us in the future even more in integrating this type of material, this type of you know CGI generated material, that we are going to hardly be able to differentiate what was captured with the camera and what was actually CGI generated. And I think you know that slowly this industry is moving in that direction, that you know we're going to be able to get more virtual with production. We're going to have to get more virtual for production because you know we're probably not going to be able to travel as much and use as many locations as we did in the past. And again, you know, this is just another reason why, you know, if we are able to work inside our timeline in Davinci in scene referred, we would just be able to integrate this type of content much, much better. So check him out. I mean, Paul Debowitz is just, you know, absolutely the best in this. I think, you know, there's many attempts of how to recreate the humans and how to do it, but he's definitely leading the way. And I have to say that once I understood his research, I understood how important it is to stay in scene referred and work in that. Then let's explain what is that display referred. And basically what has to happen is that display referred signal has to adapt those huge values, huge dynamic range that we captured onto like a display size. And basically that's it. You know, that's the kind of, in a short, you know, once we have got all this beautiful information at one moment, we have to put it into a display. Okay. Now this is an interesting like a diagram actually where you can see like the best what's happening. So you see this outline, like a, you know, the big triangle is actually Alexa wide gamma. This is really what Alexa is capable of capturing, and it's a massive color space. It kind of explains really why this camera looks so good, and just when you see the amount of, you know, information it can capture. And then if you look at the small triangle in the middle, this is your display. This is the 709, pretty much display you're looking at the moment. So of course what we have to do is we have to then take this big content, big information, then can somehow scale it down for the display. And that's basically what the display referred information is going to be. So that's going to be already reduced amount of information optimized for that display. Okay, now how do we optimize it? And we do that through a process of tone and gamut mapping. So basically, in order for us to reduce the amount, you know, we have to somehow put it together. And the most efficient way, the best way how to do it, the one that really looks the best, is the process of tone and gamut mapping. And you're going to see in Davinci where you do that now. They have much more improved now on these two processes, so you're actually able to tweak them yourself. And that is kind of really, really, really good thing. However, this is a very important thing, okay? And I think I want you just really, really to understand. The process of tone and gamut mapping is a one-way road very often, okay? It's a very much one way. So that means that once you convert your material to particular display, it is almost impossible to come back to scene referred. It's you, once you have reduced the information and you packed it for a particular display, coming back is very difficult. I actually I like you to assume that it's a one-way road, and once you have converted it, you won't be able to come back and recreate your original source. Now, certainly there are some tricks that sometimes we can do. I'm not saying, but just if you keep it in your mind that that this is the process, that once it's done, it's past, it's happened, you will actually understand at what point in your pipeline you will be converting into display referred. So basically, let's see now how we're going to build that pipeline. So what's basically the understanding, now this science and the thinking behind it, how best to build it. And it's actually really simple. I'd like to keep things simple, so I want to really just, help you understand that this is really what's happening. So your camera space and your grading space, because when you're grading, you want to work with the best possible material. You want to have access to full dynamic range, of course, has to stay in the scene referred space. Okay? Then at the end, and actually this is something you have to do in real time while you're grading, because you won't be able to view anything unless you convert it into display. And the beauty of this display conversion is that it can be done for more than one display. And another reason why I was saying why you have to really be able to master this color managed workflow now is because your next jobs most likely are going to be for HDR streaming channels, and they would want you to create HDR and SDR master at the same time, given that you had for grading in the past. So if you were a colorist grading for television or film, and you were grading on a projector, or you were grading for TV in SDR and something like that, from now on, when you start delivering to Netflix and Amazon and Hulu, you will be grading at the same time given that you had so far, but you will have to create two masters out of it. And again, this is what color management is going to do for you, because once you have graded everything in scene referred, you can then just switch the monitor transfers, display transfers, and basically you're going to be able to do that. And I'm actually happy to say that also somebody has joined us from Mars, so this is very good. Paolo, welcome. I'm happy that internet streaming is working all the way to Mars. So, okay, so now let's have a look basically what options do we have. Okay, so so we know, okay, we need to have like a color setup, our grading in some sort of scene referred space. So what options do we have? And usually the best option is actually the color space of the camera that is your main camera. And hopefully you are working on a project where majority of material is shot with a camera. Now we know that there is always cameras getting mixed. And if that happens, we can then use some input transforms to help that, okay? But, you should kind of see, okay, if everything was shot with Alexa, then your scene referred color space is going to be Alexa white gamut. If it's shot with red, then it's going to be red white gamut. And if it's shot on Sony, it's going to be S gamut 3. And if it's shot on Panasonic, it's going to be V gamut. So basically, these are your options. I mean, we always have an option to go to ACES, but this is then not using Davinci. This is another class. We're definitely going to do that in the future as well. But these are basically kind of the best options for you. And all of them work perfectly. Basically, none of them is worse or better than the other. They're actually all good. And you just have to say, okay, what's the main camera if it's a Sony or Alexa, and choose that to be your main scene color space. And then other cameras we will adapt to this space. Okay? Then, what are your options for the display? Actually, there's tons of them, but really you need to kind of just really know for these kind of 3-4. Number one, you need to know for your X9, because that's what you will be looking at most of the time. You need to know for your P3 space and 2.6 just for the projection, because, there might be still masters. I know that cinemas are shut down at the moment, but hopefully they reopen and there's going to be some need for mastering for cinema. And then we need to have a Rec 2020 PQ1000. This is the standard. And then basically sRGB 2.2 is really like, basically sRGB and Rec 709, they're the same color spaces, with the difference that sRGB has got slightly different gamma setting, simply because, you know, screens that it's being viewed on are a lot brighter, so this gamma is probably gonna look better. Okay, so these are the options. All right, so let me actually kind of show you a little bit how this works. And by the way, just before I move on to the practical part, I just wanted to remind you that next week I am doing like a class like this remotely with you know, a few of you, and it's been organized by Abel Sine, our training partner. So it's basically a remote classroom, and we're going to do it over 4 days. And we're going to work 2 hours every day from 10 a.m. to 12 Pacific time, where we're actually going to really learn this process into detail. But most importantly, like, we're going to leave us almost 2 days to learn how to build looks. Because the only reason really why we're doing all of this color management is so just we can create beautiful images. And then, you know, so we are actually going to spend half of our time, you know, learning and the tricks of how to make great looks inside, you know, the color managed workflow, and how that, you know, is really going to work for you. So, you know, without further ado, let me just go now and, you know, jump onto my Davinci. Maybe I'm just going to check to see if there was any questions before I do that. Let's see. And C-Log 2, C-Log 3 in camera. Yes, David, you're absolutely right. If you were working with a Canon, then I'm certain that, you know, C-Log 2 or C-Log 3 is going to do it. I would prefer C-Log 3, but sometimes if you haven't shot with it, it's better. Now there's a question, why wouldn't you use ACES? And it's a very good question. And, you know, like, sometimes you can't. It's just sometimes the production has already, you know, decided that they're not going to use ACES. It's not your choice, you know. It's like, if you can, you know, choose, I want to use ACES, I'm going to use ACES. It's a perfect color management system. This is an alternative to ACES. It has a certain advantages, and the main advantage why many colorists still choose not to use ACES is that their controls still behave in exactly the same way how, you know, they used to behave. Because you probably have noticed, if you ever used ACES projects, that you notice that some things don't work, layers don't work. You know, there's many things that in Davinci don't behave nowhere near in the same way that we're used to. And that is basically most important thing that's putting people off from sticking to ACES. Okay, Michael Wolf signed up for a 4-day course. Very good. No, Michael, this is not, no, we're gonna briefly mention some things that we're gonna cover here today, but actually course is gonna go much more in depth. So, you know, we're actually in this course really just covering this part of how to set up color pipeline in Davinci, but, you know, in the 4 days, it's a much deeper thing. And actually, if you go to the website, you can see there is a full program that will explain what's happening in 4 days. What if you're picking up a project and don't know what camera was used, just given an EXR sequence? That's a very good question. So, Bruce, this is again why maybe using ACES is not so important. But you know what? I would just go and set up maybe with Alexa Log C, you know, kind of that space that is universally really good space, and then use your primary to see and adjust your image and get the best result. And that's usually how I grade. If I get a material that I don't know what it is, I kind of put my time into Log C and I say, okay, let me see what's happening, what am I getting, and so on, and then try to actually kind of, you know, take it up from there. And this is again a little bit another reason why this workflow is a little bit more forgiving, that if you don't know what camera, you can still work, you can still adjust, you can still get, you know, very good results. Uday said, thank you for doing this. Uday, you're welcome. It's totally my pleasure. It's also something, you know, Uday, I'm having to tell you, I'm doing it for myself as well, because, you know, I get so many questions about this and I just don't want to keep repeating myself. Hello from Lisbon. Lisbon has a little bit of an internet connection problems. I'm sorry to hear that, Lisbon. You know, I think it's a, you know, we have quite a few people connected, but this is YouTube, you know, I think you should be able to cope with this. Okay, good. So I'm going to then leave after next part a little bit more time for questions. So hold on with that. Let me just quickly now go and start basically showing you a little bit how practically we're going to set this up in Davinci Resolve. Okay, so here I am in a Davinci project, and what I'm going to do, maybe let me see if I can switch my camera as well so you can see me. Okay, perfect. So what am I going to do now is I'm going to actually, I brought some clips in first, just on the timeline so that you can see. So they are like some stuff, a movie I worked on a while ago called 100 Streets. It's actually with Idris Elba. I loved it, actually. It was such a great project. But it was one of those movies that, end up in the cinemas for a while and then has never really made it big later. But I'm sure, if we look for it on streaming platforms, you might be able to find it. So it's all shot on Alexa, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, my main camera is Alexa, so my main space is going to then be log C. So let's go and set our project up correctly for that. So you go into settings, you go into the color management, and then in the color management tab, you go and you click and you say, okay, I want to use Davinci Color Managed, okay? So once you select that, you get all these new options. You've probably seen them before. You don't have to use separate color and gamma. So you see, because my cameras are all ARRI, so I'm going to select my input color space to be ARRI. By the way, if you get mixed cameras, you can just right mouse click. I'll show you in a minute how you can change this input on individual clips. My timeline color space is, this is a display space again, so my timeline has to stay in the scene referred space, and since I'm working with ARRI, it's going to be ARRI log C. So I need to stay in my timeline in scene referred space. Now, especially for HDR, a common mistake, and I believe, guys, that this was even part of tutorials, and I've seen it on some blogs. It's a very common mistake for people to choose this timeline color space to be Rec 2020 PQ1000. But that is really display space, so you are really kind of cornering yourself into that space to grade. And by the way, it's very difficult to grade when you put your timeline into that color space. You're going to really struggle because the curve is very steep, and it's very hard to actually grade in that space. I don't know actually, even that people were, suffering for that long, not realizing, hey, this is just not really quite working. So no, you stay in your camera space. Now my output color space is going to be Rec 709, so I want to just output an SDR first. Now what's very important is that we need to now do tonal and gamut mapping, because we're going from this large camera space to that. And you see Davinci has actually done a great job that they have updated their color management and they have added mapping here. And this is another reason why you want to really tonally map only on the output. So you want to go from large color space on the output because that's the only place where we can do tonal and gamut mapping. So this is a new setting relatively. It's called limit output gamut 2. I'm going to show you in a minute when I do HDR why we need that. Now, timeline to output tone mapping. Okay, so there are several ways how we can do tonal mapping. Now this can get a little bit tricky now, so maybe you want to start making some notes about it. But basically, when we're doing SDR, it's okay just to do a simple tonal mapping. It's going to do a good job. For SDR, this is good enough, okay? And then timeline to output gamut mapping, it should be saturation mapping, okay? Leave your knee, maybe you can put it a little bit lower than 0.9, and I use my saturation max, at least when I'm working with ARRI camera. I just find that everything looks a little bit more pleasing when it's a little bit less saturated. But again, you can actually choose if your look that you're working for needs a very strong and vivid looks, then don't do that. But when you're working on filmic kind of looks, it really works better when this kind of saturation max is a little bit lower, around 0.9. So basically with this you have generated a fall off, so that color kind of reduces its intensity from this very wide log Alexa wide gamut into like some display space. And that's it. So once I've done that, I'm going to basically say save, and straight away I have the Rec 709 look on my timeline. So basically every clip on my timeline looks as if I had put this basically ARI lookup table on it. So it's got exactly that look. Now it's not 100% identical. We are not using ARI LUT here. We are using Davinci color management to do this, and especially we're using different tonal and gamut mapping slightly than ARI is using. So you're not going to get 100% the same result, but they will be very close. Now, again, like if you are like, just, setting up the looks and stuff like this is just great, because already from the word go, you kind of have something that's looking absolutely fantastic. You see, all your timeline looks actually really, really in a good shape. Okay? And now you start. I'm going to come a little bit into the node tree scenario, what we're going to do and how we're going to build a node tree. But before I do that, I want to show you another thing. And this other thing I want to show you is how to actually do setting for HDR. It's a little bit more involved, and you're absolutely going to get it. By the way, you might have noticed that I have already switched my scopes into HDR mode. And if you're wondering how to do that, this is like here in preferences, user color, and I have enabled my HDR scopes here. So basically that way I have changed, so my scale goes from 0 to 10,000 nits. It's a little bit easier to work in HDR like that. Now let me go quickly show you this. So again, now let's say I have started a job, and actually it's a Netflix job. What we're going to do first is we're going to grade first HDR, not SDR. And the reason why we want to do this is because it's much more effective and better way to grade first everything in HDR and then trim it down to SDR. Now actually Dolby is really going to help you with that as well, because Dolby has a trimming process that is automatic, and within certain exposure brackets you're going to find that you won't need to do even a lot of trimming. But basically the right way how to do it is set your project from the word go to be HDR. So let's do that. So let's set this project up as if this is like a Netflix grading project. So what we're going to do first is we're going to say output color space. Now, what we want this color space to be is actually Rec 2100 ST 2084. So the standard for HDR that we all are using is basically Rec 2100. So this is kind of, this standard has got that Rec 2020 color space. And ST 2084 is the number for the PQ curve, the 1000 nit PQ curve that, we need to use for HDR. What's the beautiful thing about this standard is it actually can be also in hybrid log gamma if they need it, but no one's going to ask you for hybrid log gamma masters at the moment, so don't really panic about that. So just leave it to be basically the, Rec 2100 ST 2084. Now we have to do special thing to do this limit output gamut 2. And why? Okay, and this is very specific for Netflix, and I've seen it actually for some other channels, and I got it recently for Sony as well, and so on. So because 2020 is such a big color space, and we know that we can't really even find a TV that can cover all of that space, it's possible that things don't look quite the same on different TVs, even though they all say they're Rec 2020. But what we found is that if we limit color space to a P3D65, then actually what's going to happen is that we are still going to be working according to the standard, that we're going to still outputting, theoretically primaries for Rec 2020, but we will never leave the P3D65 space. So actually images are going to look identical, because the majority of HDR screens can cover this space. All Apple Pro devices are actually P3D65 devices. So it's a really smart thing to limit your space like this straight away. And actually it's a requirement as well, technical requirement to deliver exactly like this. Now, how to do the tone mapping. Simple mapping is not going to work for HDR. So for that, we have to use luminance mapping. And in a luminance mapping, what is very important to do is to set your maximum nit rate that you want your project to be, and your project, and this has to be the maximum that your screen can show. And I am assuming that you don't have Dolby Apollo 4000 nits, so the setting, this is the only screen that can do actually, like actually there was one screen from Flanders that was doing I think 2000 nits or something like that, but by all means, what you want to do is you want to set this up to what your monitor is capable, and this is in our case, in most cases, 1000 nits. Okay, and this is going to work now. Okay, the next thing we want to do is we're going to say again, I want to do saturation mapping, and I usually leave it exactly on these settings. Another thing that I would recommend you do is you also switch this HDR mastering for 1000. This is purely for metadata purposes, so that your HDMI cable can trigger the TV to go into the HDR mode. It's just really for that. It's nothing else than that. But if you're already setting everything up to HDR, you might as well do that. So bang. And now I have my timeline straight away set to be in the HDR. So you see, basically, why is this such a cool thing? So like I can just go and flick between the two monitors or two settings, and actually all my grades and everything is really going to adapt. And I know that it looks a little bit flat for you guys here, but on my HDR monitor, this is looking like a beautiful image. There is, however, a caveat. Davinci is not going to do any translation between HDR to SDR for you. This image is looking as an SDR image on HDR monitor. As you see, the maximum signal is only 100 nits, which is basically, what you started with. So you will have to do manually, to basically make it brighter. But what's really good is this. If you lift, let's say, the signal and I make it much brighter, I will never be able to go above 1000 nits. So my master is never going to fail because I was brighter than 1000 nits. The technical specification says it has to be 1000 nits max. You can't go above it. So hey, there we go. The 1000 nit setting in color management is just going to help me not make these mistakes. And you know what? These mistakes will happen because you'll have some specular highlight. You're going to have some things that will go above, and you want to clip them. You want to clamp them. So basically, this is kind of why I really like this way of working. Okay, another thing, basically, the way of working I like is when the machine does as much for me as possible, so if I don't have to do everything manually myself. So why would I want to worry if there is anything going above 1000 nits? I should actually get machine to clip off any of that. And if I can do it, please, where can I do it? Switch this button on. Fantastic, I'm done. Okay, another thing I want to show you as well, which is a very important thing, is a node tree. Okay, so I'm just going to go and apply this node tree. But actually, let me just go back to my SDR so that you can guys actually see what's happening. So I'm just going to go back again. So I'm going to undo this. So I'm going to go to simple. I will move it to this, and here I'm going to go to Rec 709 2.4. Excellent. So I just want you to see basically, better what I'm doing. Okay. So this is a node tree that I think works well. Again, be creative in the way how you want to do, these node trees, guys. This is just a suggestion, the one that works. But it could be like just a starting point, or you might adopt it and say, hey, or you actually might be using it already like this. So your first node is always your primary, is your CDL. So this is really where you're going to build your look. This is where you're going to make sure that, things just look absolutely beautiful, right? So look at that. So I'm kind of basically just, basically putting it into, giving it a nice feel like this, okay? Great. So you see, just with a few tweaks, I have gone from quite kind of, Alexa looking kind of look to something that feels a little bit more like a film. Now, the reason why this is happening as well is because I have a show LED here. What is very specific about this show LED is that it's going from log C to log C. So you see this showlet is not really converting to display space. It's a showlet that stays in scene referred space. And this is something I'm going to teach you how to build in a class as well. It's just, it's a better way of working. So you have showlet that just there to give you this look. So you see this is basically completely ungraded. This is with a showlet, and this is then, with my primary applied to it. Usually what you want to do is you want to use this trim node to do a little bit of a kind of, I'm going to switch editable splines, and what I do with it is I kind of give it a little crunch like this. Sometimes I want to leave a little highlight. It just kind of helps me like my show just get a little bit of kind of, that S shape. It just looks pleasing to the eye, Okay, so I think, I need to just open up my midtone a little bit here again. I'm going to just do it with a little bit gamma, and there we go, so I'm happy again. All right, here I would always first start with some curves. So what I mean the curves is usually some saturation curves, stuff like, that I can do fix it. For example, I was to say, this jacket needs to come down a little bit. I think it's a little bit too much. Then I would use, hue versus sat, and I would try to maybe take some green out of the jacket or something like that. Then I would go as next and do some qualifiers. As you can see, I put them into parallel nodes so that they all blend together a little bit nicer. And then I would do some, free nodes for whatever stuff I need to do here. And then I always reserve these 3 nodes for windows. Sometimes it can expand to more windows, so, I could sometimes have 20 windows. I mean, it's not unusual. Like on shots, when I have enough time, I'll definitely love to use windows a lot. And then these nodes here are my trim nodes. And this is basically director said, hey, fix something, or, Actually, I have to tell you that I have to credit Walter Volpato for these notes. he was the one who showed us this on one of the colorist meetups, and he was actually amazing. He came up and he drew his note tree, and I really like this. I took this off him, I actually like what you do is you kind of, when everybody wants you to adjust something, you have a note just for that person saying, and then, when in parallel, they can offset each other. So one of the notes could be your HDR, SDR trim node. One could be directors, and DPs, suggestions and so on. So you basically have this kind of, at the end, trim nodes for stuff like that. Okay, so let's say now I have basically got some sort of, basic look, things are looking kind of, let's see, this shot is a little bit too cold now, so I just need to quickly just warm it up a little bit. Let me see, I have to actually warm it here as well. This shot, maybe I want to copy from here. Yeah, it's nicer, so like that, maybe a little bit less saturation. And then, this scene here, again, what's really, really beautiful is, look, this is like a high-vis jackets, but there is absolutely no distortion on them, because why? Because we work on this, very wide color space. You might have seen that sometimes, this type of, high, intensity, bright colors can also show some signs of distortion. It's not going to happen when you're grading scene referred, because you're in such a big space, you will hardly notice that stuff's happening. And so I'm just going to go and, let's say this is my kind of, nodes done. I'm not going to go too much into detail. I'm pretty sure you know how to grade already. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to go and basically click onto the rocket, because there is another very important part that you need to know. This is new, and this is super important for you to understand. I certainly won't render as basically QuickTime H.264. It will be ProRes. Probably ProRes. If it's Amazon, it's 422. If it's basically Dolby Vision Masters, you render ProRes 444, usually in 4K, but for the demo I wouldn't scale it down. But go down to advanced settings. Okay, now have a look. In advanced settings, you have here these 2 new things. I don't know whether you noticed them or not, but basically they kind of, have put it in and haven't told us they're in. So what's important, when you render your file, okay, you need to embed into that file a metadata that will tell encoding system what is exact property of that file. And especially if you're working in Catalina, if I was to render a ProRes to you and I was to give it to you, Catalina, macOS Catalina, is definitely going to pick that metadata information and decide how this file is going to look if you play it on a desktop. So you have to really be careful about it. This is super important. So in my case, I'm going to go and say, yes, this is the Rec 709, okay? And I'm going to go and say, yes, I want it to be 2.4 gamma. And now, even though my timeline was in log C setting, I'm going to override this setting, because in the past, Davinci used to take information, whatever was timeline setting, which was an absolute nightmare. So now I can say, no, listen, I work scene referred, but I will give you the metadata in a file correctly. And I'm so happy they did it. They solved really, really big problem with this. Now, what should you set if you were to grade in HDR? I want to just make sure you guys get that as well. And this is then Rec 2020 as a color space. And then you want as your gamma to be Rec 2100 ST2084. This is the delivery mastering standard. This is what your channel is going to look first if your file has this metadata before, otherwise they won't be able to encode and transcode and make anything out of it. So these two settings, try to remember, are going to be the ones that are really, really important once you start rendering to deliver your masters in HDR. Okay? So that is kind of, I think the settings that were super important, and, this kind of metadata. And I can see that we are already 50 minutes in, so maybe what I think would be very good is if I was now to look what's happening in our chat, and then to see whether maybe I should take some questions and see what's going on. So let me go. I'm just going to scroll up a little bit, because what I'm doing, I can't really follow the chat at the same time. So let's see. Okay, Ed was saying something about ACES. All right. What about shooting Atmos Ninja HDR? That's okay. I don't know about Ninja. I think you should not use Ninja to record in any HDR. Don't let those recorders record in camera space. Don't really use them to convert any HDR. You do this in the grading room. Don't please record and transform into any color formats on set. You just basically stick it to exactly what camera outputs. Get your, log space from the camera. Thomas asked me, Dado, if you don't separate color space and gamma, the Rec 100 limits you only to 1000 nits. So you don't need to limit your max time and luminance if you separate. Okay, that's a very good one. Now, Thomas, I have found that actually, even if I leave it to a 2084, that actually I can push my grading to go above 1000 nits. And what's more important, Thomas, as well, the tonal mapping has to happen from 0 to 1000 nits. So please actually use that setting, the tonal mapping setting. This is not just whether your settings are or not. This is just really to get the translation done correctly. It really is important. The image is going to look completely different unless you make that setting. Your starting point changes for display referred media. No, actually, you know what? If I start in HDR, this is my starting point, and that's usually what I would want to do. I would want to just basically work like that. Steve, Dolby Vision is a system for actively remapping from HDR master to other brightness. So actually, Steve, I'm going to certainly do like a much deeper thing about Dolby Vision. Dolby Vision actually maps every frame, even though we calculate Dolby Vision on scene by scene basis, it does it on frame by frame basis. So if you have a Dolby Vision master, it will map its signal on the TV on every frame differently. It's actually really, really well done. And the trimming with Dolby Vision got better with version 4, and we got much faster. Normally what you get now for Dolby Vision is only half a day to do the trim pass for SDR, and actually works if you've been, following the rules a little bit. Like, there are some rules with exposure. There's a so-called 200 nit rule, and if you do that, you will find that you have to do minimum amount of manual trimming with Dolby Vision. Okay, Elliot says, for the output color space setting, what is the difference between these 4 options? Rec 2100 ST2084, Rec 2100 scene, ST2084, and ST2400 nits. Okay, let me just explain. The right setting for you, Elliot, is Rec 2100 ST2084. This is the right setting, okay? This is the display setting. The scene setting is only used if you are bringing in media that has been saved in that color space. That means, I have a file that came to me graded with 2100, then I would actually read that file with scene bracket setting. So that's the reverse setting, okay? ST2084 and ST2084 nits basically are, ST2084 is your PQ curve, okay? And that basically PQ curve can go from 0 to 10,000 nits, and the number afterwards tells you what's the maximum of that. So you could say that ST2084 nits is identical to Rec 2100 ST2084 because effectively, however, because the standards evolved, and because ST2100 is the latest standard, that's the one that we work for. So just use that one just to be sure. And that Walter the God, yes, Jeremy, I'm a big fan of Walter. He did the best meetup ever. I think, he was just absolutely so good, I really, really, really love him. If you import display referred media like Rec 709 sRGB, the tone mapping of the output, since not invertible, that doesn't work well. Eddie, I have to tell you, you're absolutely right. There is still basically room for improvement. So we definitely have to a little bit do it. There are ways. Eddie, maybe hit me on separately, and I can basically explain to you what they are. I will teach that also in my class. There are ways how we bring Rec 709 media into this timeline. And how we invert it correctly. It's a little bit going beyond this 1 hour that I can show, but it's actually possible to do it not using Davinci's tools, unfortunately, but there are ways how to do it. Let me see, I just want to see a little bit further down what's happening, some newer questions. Is it possible to color grade HDR10 if my monitor has only 400 nits? Well, not. The answer is no. So actually, if you want to grade HDR today, you just go and buy an LG TV, and just go to our website. In color training, we have a tutorial how to calibrate it, and just do it. There is nothing better for money, and nothing's going to look better. And right now, because we were in lockdown and we couldn't really all have 30,000 monitors, Netflix has actually allowed us to use these monitors, LG monitors at home, and then just before we finish the master, we would send it to the main facility where somebody would use the real reference monitor, and they would basically do it. So actually, it's becoming more and more and more adopted monitor. So 400 nits, I'm afraid, is not going to do it. Okay, the gamma tag, for example, must be 709 gamma tag, not 2.4. You are changing the end of... No, wait, Eddie, that's not true. 2.4 is actually correct setting because we are outputting to the display and we don't want to add OOTF to it. So actually, this is the 709 is just that kind of BT1886 gamma. But stick with 2.4. It's also to do how your monitors calibrate it and everything like that. Okay, so basically, what is the LG TV model? It is called, I think, C9. Okay, so basically it's called C9 or C8. Both of them are working very, very well. Okay, very good. The Katrin from France is here. Thanks, Dada. Oh, it matters that the pics look compelling. Yes, you're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. What monitor should you get then? Yes, I did answer. Just say this. You know. Uh, uh, okay, what am I using to calibrate? I actually, think that everybody's using same. I don't think I haven't seen any, at least like here in LA, everybody's just using Kalman, and it's really good to do, with the software that everybody's using, because that you're getting same results as everyone else. And they also even have a setting for called Netflix setting that you can just click on, and it's going to guide you through, and you get a printout that you can prove that you calibrated settings according to Netflix standards if you work for them. So they made it actually really, really easy. So, but I'll be honest with you, I hate monitor calibration. I don't do it myself. I get Abel Cine to calibrate my monitors. So actually there's a few guys as well that calibrate monitors in LA that are amazing how to do it, how they're doing it. But I have a great relationship with Abel Cine as well, and they do all of my monitor calibration. Okay. Eddie, I don't want to go into discussion, Eddie, with the OOTFs now. I think it's just going to be like a very long, and we're going to go down the rabbit hole. So if you want to talk about it, just hit me like a separately. I'm happy to pick this up for you and explain to you why 2.4 and not 709. So we can definitely discuss this, but I just feel we're going to hijack this thread for stuff that's not really interesting for most people. Luca, could you share with us your setup? Ah, really? Okay, so look, this is my setup that I have at the moment. So I have a MacBook Pro, the 2019. And I basically, got just a very much standard, not even lots more RAM or anything like that. I have a Thunderbolt 3 RAID connected to it. I have also Thunderbolt 3 SDI out of it. I have got a monitor that I'm testing for a manufacturer at the moment, so I won't be able to tell you what it is, but it's an OLED HDR monitor, very small in size, and it's beautiful. I have to tell you, let's hope they're gonna make it a monitor, because they gave me just a very early prototype, and I have actually not kind of, separated myself from that monitor. It's basically the same technology that X300, the early Sony used, but it's just in a slightly smaller size. So it's good for me when I work at home, just me. And then if I want to actually have a little bit of a review, then I have an LG, but my LG is in the living room, so I have to bring it in. I watch Netflix on that LGs and my normal TV, and I have an LG that I can then watch it in a bigger size HDR. But for normal work, I do this. I don't use any balls at all. I only have Stream Deck controller where I use printer lights, and for the rest of the things I do it with a keyboard and mouse. So I actually kind of just got used to using a lot of just numbers and printer lights, and many cinematographers I work with like that. They kind of just like me to tell me, oh, give me a few numbers, and that's it. This is pretty much my setting. This is and I'm able to do everything I need to do with this. Rendering is also very fast, and if I get any real-time performance, I'll do some caching. I would never grade, for example, red raw on it. I would always transcode it first, and I recommend you guys do the same as well. Even if you have a beefy machine, just sometimes make a proxy as a ProRes 444 first before you start grading. It's just going to be less crashing and less problems and less stuff going on. Okay, so hey Dado, when will ColorUp 2.0 be released? Okay, I actually have just this morning tested a Windows version of it. I love it. We are getting there. We're completely rebuilding it, by the way, and we're building in a subtractive color science for film stock emulation. We have completely new film stock profiles as well. We're going to have look blending. It's just going to be a real beast. Things slow down. As we went into lockdown, we were not really able to continue at the same pace as we were before. So My hope is that, by the end of this month we have a first beta. So if you already user, I will contact all existing users and offer them to start beta testing and get early on. And by the way, if you want to guys try playing with the Color Lab existing version, I have a 30 days free trial, fully functional. You can export, do everything like that. And if you like it, it's going to be only $100 after that. It's called the learner version. It's not like the full version, but has all the functionality. Everything's there, and we have updated it also to work on Catalina and 16.2. So just go to colorlab.co and take this as an opportunity and basically play with it. It's a great little software. Okay, then Alex says BBC NHK and CCTV ask for HLG master. Thank you, Alex. I was really hoping that someone's going to say that. Now look, I have been working this year with the NBC Universal, who were going to go and do Olympic Games, and basically we had to do everything as a HLG, so I have a lot of experience with it, so I have been supporting the Olympic team in the US, and we actually really got it to work really well. It was so flexible for SDR, HDR. I can really see why companies want to do this. And the process is exactly the same. Like I set it up, you would just go rec 2100, but instead of choosing PQ curve, you would choose HLG curve, and it won't change anything for you. So you're actually going to be absolutely fine. Hey Cedric, new Color Lab. Yes, very good. Oh, William is here. Wait, William is my favorite DIT. Since I'm working in HDR with the mastering reference display, we grade at the maximum peak values. No tone mapping applied to the display. What is the workaround to tone mapping a client TV when working simultaneously with both display under the same HDR format? Villain, I don't think I can understand this question very well. I think we're going to have to just email me with this. You got my email, please, and I'll try to help you with it. Juan asked me, what do you do with different cameras? Let me show you that. That's actually a very good question. 1 second. I think I really have to show you what you do with the different cameras. You're right, Juan. Actually, I was going to show this, but somehow I think I forgot about it. So let me show you what I normally do. So basically, what you want to do is you want to convert your camera that you're bringing in to be basically in the same color space, that you are, and it's super easy. You just let's say this clip here, or no, actually I have a little timeline. I prepared one timeline called Camera Match Timeline. So look, so what I got here is a one shot. This was shot with Sony F55. This is shot with Red. This is shot with Panasonic. And this is shot with ARRI. And all I did is this. I right mouse click. I go into basically input color space, okay? And then I scroll to the camera I'm using. In my case, it's sgamma3.cine. And there we go. So basically, and you do it for this kit here. I basically said this, okay, input color space is gonna be red, white, gamut, log3G10, okay? And so I did for Panasonic, and actually look at it. I mean, it's not as good as Aces, right? But it actually does a pretty good job, So this is basically how Davinci color management matches your 4 cameras together. And they are all completely different cameras, right? You have to understand that they don't really look like at all like this, so when from raw they look completely different. So it does actually a pretty good job. Usually the problems are usually on the exposure end a little bit, but then you're using your offset like here, just to kind of tweak a little bit exposure, and then you're done. This is basically easy how to do it like that. Okay. So I think our time is also running out. Usually it runs over. I think I could do this for hours, to be honest with you, but I actually have another like a call I need to take. We've been I'm still working, and I have a very important client call I have to take. Maybe next time I'm going to maybe leave a little bit more time, leave a Guys, let me know if you like this and if you think this is useful. I'm happy to do more of these, like 1 hour quick kind of chats. We'll tackle a little subject and, clear any doubts. Like, I just really want you to be able to work according to industry standards. I want you to be able to kind of not be sidelined by information you can find online, because not everything is correct. And I just want to give you basically, look, this is what you need to know if you are going to get a job for like like something like, bigger channel, in this case, Netflix, Amazon, and all of these guys. So let me know if you think this is all useful, and I'll keep doing them because I really, really love it. It's a fantastic way for me to connect with you as well. It's always exciting, that moment before you go live, it feels like there's like a little adrenaline. And I think this is also the reason why I really, joined this industry, is because this kind of desire to thrive, to be better, to improve, to experiment, to get better results is really kind of what for me is the most interesting part of my job. So I will definitely do it more. Just please let me know. And, be safe, as they say, I think we're coming out of this lockdown. I don't think it's gonna, last forever. I think slowly we're coming out, And guys, I am going to let you know, maybe even hopefully next week, if you give me good feedback, I'll be back with another 1 hour lesson. I speak to you all soon. Love you loads, everybody, and stay safe.